Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Sacred Leadership Podcast. I have an extra special guest with me today, Miss Lexie Wilson. Lexie Wilson is a birth chart reader, astrologer, and coach based out of San Diego, California. She enjoys helping people find out who they really are and understand their feelings using their birth chart. She uses astrology as a tool to help individuals find their purpose and then create a lifestyle that supports them being their most authentic self and having the power to set boundaries to protect their energy. Yes, Lexie.
We love that one.
We love that one. And if you do not already follow Lexie, Lexie's also a fire content creator. Absolutely love the energy that you bring to social media. Everything is just so fun and energized and relatable. So if you get nothing else out of this podcast recording, at the very least, go follow Lexie. We will be dropping all of those links in the show notes. And it is just a good time over there on your social media.
Yes, I try to make it.
It's a party. It's really, really fun. I love it. And so, after everyone goes and follows you, they can come back to this episode and they can learn a little bit about you and your story from your own words. Where were you before you got into doing the work that you're doing now?
Girl, all over. That's where I was.
We'll start with the truth right off. That's how we do it.
It's like before this, it's very interesting because there's I grew up in a cult. So that's the first part that always gets people.
So there's that.
What? There's, right? They're like, that exists. Yes, it does. It totally does. I was a third generation inside. So my grandma joined, then she raised my parents in it, and then and my aunts and uncles and all that. And then I was raised in it as well as the rest of my family. So that's the first part of the background. Then the second part is I went to school. I thought I'm going to become a therapist. That's going to be my thing. I loved helping people. But once I started working in the field, for the particular job that I had, I was limited at what kind of tools I could use. And I felt myself expanding into spirituality a lot more because I was going through what I did not know at the time was my Saturn return. So I was going through that 29 switch over into 30 and feeling unhappy about my job and what I was doing, feeling like this is not what I thought it was going to be, not only in terms of the type of work that I'm doing and the type of people that I'm working with, but also the way that it's making me feel. I thought I was going to feel much more like clarity about this. And instead, I'm actually finding myself having more questions about everything. And it's really, when you're working in social work and you're working in therapy, it's a fast way to grow up. All of a sudden you realize like the world is very different than what you thought it was when you were a kid. Add in being somebody who is just now also realizing that I didn't know that I was in a cult at the time, but I started to recognize that I could not stay in this environment anymore. So you have this recipe of me having this like crisis of identity, crisis of faith, and crisis of my purpose happening all at the same time, right?
Oh, that sounds like a good time.
Right? It sounds like a grand time, and I was just struggling so bad because I felt like there was no area of my life where I could get reprieve. Everything was just causing me to feel this sense of confusion and not like I didn't belong anywhere. Because even when I started to ask questions, if I'm asking questions of my friends at the time, they're inside the cult just like I am. So their answers are going to always be bringing me back to our text and the things that we described as holy and all this other stuff. And yet it's not sitting right with me. And because I don't have enough contact with the outside world, other than my job, which I'm being brainwashed into thinking that these people, because they're not part of our cult, are not of the right mind and they're being led by bad things. So I can't really talk to them about this crisis of faith that I'm having, or even just the questions about what are we doing as humanity with our jobs and things like that. I can't ask them because I don't trust these types of people. So that's where essentially life starts for me, is that breakdown of I've got to decide, am I going to come out of this cult, which means I could lose my friends and my family, which I did. We're just now repairing things, but it's been almost 8 years since then.
Wow.
And, where it begins is that space of trying to figure out like, well, what am I going to do? I end up quitting my job eventually. But that led to a whole series of events of literally almost getting evicted and having to then sleep on my friends' couches and travel and leave the state that I was in to go and get another job in another state, someplace I'd never been, which was Chicago. Not too bad, but still, and it's like I had to do all of these, like have all these painful moments in order to try to find some direction. And that's eventually the beginning of where we come to where we are now.
So kind of taking us back to that space where you really felt like you had nowhere to turn. Everything was either this intense echo chamber of things that didn't really resonate with you, or you felt like you couldn't trust any other sources. How did you begin to listen to yourself in the middle of all of that?
Yeah, I think, what's so funny? So I think, man, that's a really good question. How did I start listening to myself? I think there's always been a little bit of me that was like an inner listener, because I was always called rebellious. And I wasn't like, when you compare me to the kids of the world, which is what we called people who were not inside of the call, I was definitely not rebellious compared to like what kids were doing my age, but based off of the culture that I was coming from, the elders in my church, my parents, they always saw me as rebellious. And now I look back and it's because I had that ability to question and go, well, that doesn't seem like that makes sense, okay. And that was me listening to that inner voice. I think when I was 29, I know now when I was 29, what really kicked it off was my mom and I had a huge falling out. And at the time, part of what was happening was, so I actually, it wasn't part of the cult, but part of the pressure from the cult put my mom and my stepfather at the time in a place where they felt justified to use physical punishment a lot on me. So I experienced a lot of abuse. And that wasn't their intention, but it was part of the mentality. And so part of that was still happening when I was 29. And so once I started working.
Wow, so even as a grown adult, this is woman. Like, you're not even 19, you're 29.
I'm 29 and
being in relationship to these people, they still felt like they had the authority 100%. To interact with you in that way.
Yeah, because I didn't have full like body autonomy. Part of the call as well is like, thinking that, especially as a woman, everything that I do, I have to keep in accordance with the idea that a man could be tempted, right? So just that idea controls how other people like it controls my body. So I have to wear certain clothes. I wasn't allowed to wear jewelry. I had to wear very basic makeup, which is why I love to wear makeup now. But it's like, and why I also love jewelry. But I wasn't allowed to.
You're always very well accessorized. I know you just got a nose piercing.
It's exactly right. Yep. Oh my God. And that was huge. I'm so excited about the nose piercing. But so now I'm like living it up. I'm fully in my earth signness. So I like love material. But growing up, I wasn't allowed to. And so by nature of those kind of rules, it creates this distance and this disconnect within myself that my body is fully mine. So if you add that, and then you have my mom who also grew up with that same notion, it means that she's going to feel justified in taking control of, whatever happens to your body. So if I want to hit you because you did something inappropriate, like what right do you have to stop me? I'm your mother. I'm here to guide you. So that's where, but part of that is so deeply entrenched in the mentality that happens. So it's what she was raised with as well. So that's part of when I was 29, what happened was when I was at work, I was working in the foster care system at the time, and I was doing therapy with the clients who had their children removed. And so when I was watching like what was happening, part of what was opening my eyes was recognizing how these things that children were being removed from the home for were things that were significantly less than what I had dealt with. And I didn't
Ooh,
at first, I know. Yeah. Girl, come on, it's scary. And at first, my reaction to that was like, I genuinely thought it was the government. I thought, like, you guys are wrong. You guys are taking advantage and you're going into people's homes and you're saying these things are wrong when you just don't understand. Like, this is how, like, this is normal. Not all families act like this. Yeah. That was the mentality that I had at first. Even in my
that's
training,
all you knew. That's what you had grown
right.
up with. It's that whole subjective reality. Like we don't know what we don't know.
We don't know.
So there's this clash of narratives that you're existing between.
Oh. Right. And it's like, it goes against my value system because
the value system you had been given.
Been given. But even part of my value system that I still have today, which is, but families belong together. That was what I was coming into. And so now when I see you disrupting the family for quote unquote reasons that I think that's not really that big, it gives me permission to go, well, maybe it is that big, right? So now this value that you have, that, like I said, that I've been given to be like, families belong together. The world is trying to destroy families because they want to push Satan's agenda, and that they're really like, that's the mindset that I'm being raised with. So I'm thinking of this as like, man, this is like agents of Satan, that they think they're doing good work, but they're not doing good work because they're just destroying these families for reasons that are ridiculous. When you have to have that thought process every day while working with clients, children, it makes you start to go, if I'm seeing this every day with multiple clients, that these kids are being removed for these things and these things and these things, is it them or is it like my mindset is not right? If I'm starting to see this repeated behavior of them saying, no, this is dangerous. This is dangerous. This child needs to be removed. This, and this. And I'm going, okay, but what? You can't have that happen for so long before you start to question your worldview. And that's what was starting to happen inside of myself, that because I found myself, and I think like, that's because deep down, I knew that it was wrong because there was somewhere inside of me that knew that the abuse that I had endured was wrong. But because I had to quiet that girl for so long, in order for me to fully get to this place of recognizing that what I'm seeing is abuse and that I myself am a child of abuse, I have to get to this place of constantly being confronted with people saying, this is not right. This is not right. This is not right. And it woke up the little girl inside of me that was like, no, I remember that this is not right. And so one day with my mom, we had an argument and it got physical and I had to go to work and I was a mess the next day. Like emotionally, I was a mess. Physically, I was a mess. And I had to go and present myself in court. And I felt like such a fraud. Because here I'm saying, here are my findings of what I'm finding with working with these parents. Here's what my suggestions are when it comes to, right, and I'm there when I'm realizing like in court that this doesn't make sense. Like I am saying that this is wrong, but yet last night, like when I'm getting slapped around, nothing's wrong with that, like this doesn't make sense. And so it started to really tear at me, which that really was the beginning of the actions necessary to say, I got to leave this job. Because on one hand, I am being triggered so badly right now. And I don't even know what's happening. Genuinely don't know what's happening. 2, I've got to stand up to my mom because now I feel horrible that I'm letting her treat me a certain way. And then going to work and acting like I'm normal when I don't feel like I am. And I'm feeling disrespected all the time, which then makes it hard for me to also feel like I was getting bullied at work. And my mom didn't understand, why are you getting bullied at work? Why are you letting people do this to you? But on the other hand, it's like, well, I'm letting you do this to me at this moment right now. So that's why I find myself still at work dealing with bullies, right? And so because of that environment, all of those things came together that pushed me to like stand up for myself. But my mom, when I stood up to her, it turned into like the biggest argument, the biggest thing that we'd ever had, which eventually led to us not talking or seeing each other for 7 years. I just recently saw her, like recently. But we haven't seen each other. We hadn't talked because she completely cut me out of her life and blocked me and all the things. And on one hand, that destroyed me. I ended up super, super depressed for years because of that. But the good part of
that's
it,
still your mom. It doesn't matter,
right, but she's still
like
my
if
mom.
it's right, if it's wrong, there's a
Right.
biological, physiological, relational part of that is just hardwired into us.
Right, right. And it's like, I know her story. So I know that, because some people will be like, I don't understand how you could, but like, my mom is me from a different time, and so
Wow.
I understand that completely. You know what I mean? So I really love her. And I know that had she been given the opportunities that, interestingly enough, she did end up giving me, it came with a dose of other stuff too, because that's what she was raised with. But if she was me in a different time, it would have went differently. And if I was her in a different time, I'd probably go the same way. So I don't have the same, like, I used to have so much anger towards my family. And I was like, why didn't you guys do the right thing? Like, you guys knew what was happening in my house, some of my family members, what was going on. Why didn't anybody stand up for me? But at the same time, I also recognize now I'm an aunt and I have a beautiful niece and nephew. And, I know how I fiercely protect them, but I also know how complicated things can be when you're an adult and how hard it is. And so I have a different understanding now of my childhood it doesn't justify anything that happened inside of the cult or happened inside of my family. But I understand that we are people and a lot of us are walking around with trauma that is unhealed. And that is part of my mom's story. And so it came out against the people that I think that she really does love us to the best of her ability. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that there's no harm there. There is, but I have to understand what like keep her in context, Mm-hmm. And so that's how I look at her now. But I definitely had it wasn't like back then I didn't have the attitude at all. Okay?
No. I think that is something that takes a lot of, spiritual work. I really think that, because therapy can help us with these things. Coaching can help us with these things, like all of that. But when we come to that place of unconditional compassion for other people, that's me. That is spiritual work. And I talk to my therapy clients a lot, and I will often use this metaphor of, if you show up and you work for somebody and they're like, you know what, I'm going to pay you $10. And you're like, okay, cool. I show up, I work, I've earned my $10. I know that I'm worthy and deserving of this $10. I've done enough to earn that $10. And then you go to collect your payment and that person only has $1. They don't have any more money to give you.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? They don't have the $10 to give to you. So then you have this option of you can accept that $1 as if it were $10. You could accept that $1 and say yo, this is only $1. You still owe me $9. Or, you can be like, you know what? I don't want anything. If you can't give me the full $10, then don't pay me at all. And then that person has the decision to either be like, oh, well, I guess I can't pay them. Or you know what? You could go borrow it from a friend. You could go work. You could go to the bank. Everyone has choices and options. But I think that that's where we get to decide, just because somebody doesn't have something to give us.
Yes.
We get to decide how we interact with that. We get to make that choice of are you going to still keep asking somebody for $10 that they don't have?
When they don't have it.
They just don't have it to give you.
Right.
But then to that point, you also don't have to accept $1 like it's $10. Right. You also don't have to, say, you know what, that's fine. I'll just keep showing up and working for you for free. You don't have to do that either. You get to decide how you're going to interact with that. But just know that you can't keep expecting that person to give you something that they don't have to give. And I'm sure that you also saw this in your earlier work. Mm-hmm. I see people whose parents genuinely tried the best that they could. And
Yes.
those are
Yeah.
the clients that I have that are always able to access some level of healing somewhere along the
Yeah.
line. The people
Yeah.
who are really fucked up are the ones
Yeah.
whose parents could have done better, but
And they
chose
chose
not to.
not to. Yes,
Those are the
100%.
people like, oof,
Yeah, because there's
that's something
something
that's really hard to
genuinely wrong.
integrate.
Right, exactly. And that is, I definitely saw that a lot. I saw that a lot with parents who I could see how much they loved their children, but they just did not have it. And not even in terms of the material things, right? We're talking also about they didn't have the love within them to give that love to the
Mm-hmm.
child. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
have I've seen parents where they've been addicted to drugs since they were 12 years old because their parents gave it to them. So it's not that this parent now is so self-centered that they can't, and I put air quotes, guys, but it's not that they're so self-centered that they can't, get off the drugs for their kids' sake. Their story is much deeper than that. And so you're talking about this is still, just because they became a parent does not mean that they lost their humanity. They didn't become superhuman. They are just people with children. And so they're still struggling. They still have their stories behind them. And when you're seeing that and you see truly like the good in these people, it helps you to, again, not at the time directly, but it was those seeds that I needed so that when I was in a space of forgiveness for my own mother, I could see that I was like, we're not talking about somebody who was like, I just don't care about my kids. I'm just going to do whatever the church tells me to do. And we're not talking about that. We're talking about somebody who also was lost herself and was also trying to figure out like, how do I do this? And dealt with a lot of trauma in her childhood that was completely ignored and even sometimes victim blamed onto her because of the church. So that's where it's like that completely, you have to keep that in context for where she was and what pressure that put her in. That if she's thinking, I have to do these sorts of things to protect my child, but if this is a difference between heaven and hell, now it changes the
That's some
context.
pretty high stakes stuff. Like,
yeah, you know what I'm saying? And that's where it's like, okay, if you keep that in context, it helps you to understand that we're not just talking about somebody who was just like, I didn't care about my kids, so I just did whatever I could to control them. This is all she could give was the $1, and that's where I think that having those experiences at that time is what once I realized truly that she was limited, like for real, when it comes to recognizing that I'm an individual person, that's when everything fell apart. I left because I was like, I can't do this, especially once and I think it was so good that she stopped talking to me because that was what I needed to leave, like to leave everything, And so even though it sucked, if she didn't do that, I wouldn't have left my job. I wouldn't have left the church. I mean, I would have, but it wouldn't have been as abrupt as it was, but it was like, I needed to leave now because everything now comes into question because my whole world is the way that it is because it's coming from her. Right. So if now I'm starting to recognize this woman can't even respect my body autonomy and is willing to still harm me like I'm a 7-year-old kid, now I've got to question everything that's been created for me because I don't know if you're making all the right decisions here, And so now it's like, I'm leaving this job. I'm leaving this church. I'm leaving this house. I'm leaving this state because I don't want to be here when I'm here because I was trusting your guidance.
So what really was that like for you? Because I talk to so many people, and I'm sure you talk to so many people who are on that precipice where they know that something's not right, whether it's the relationship that they're in or, a situation with a family member or a job, right? Like they're in something that they know is toxic to them on some level, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, or maybe multiple, right?
Yeah.
And they know that there's going to be a high cost. There's going to be a cost to change, a cost to leaving, a cost to cutting ties, a cost to doing something different. And in your case, it was all of it. It was the most extreme price that you could probably pay. as a human being, literally leaving your family, your community, your everything, and going out into the unknown with no foundation, no support, no nothing. Sounds like very little money, especially if you're working as a social worker, like,
right. I was broke.
And so like taking us back to that time. And obviously this was before, you became so well versed in nervous system regulation and spirit and, Reiki and all that stuff. So like, how'd you do it? How did you do it?
Right. And so funny, my boyfriend has always said this about me, that he was like, one day you're going to get to like where you need to be and you're going to go, I don't know how I did this. And I feel like to a certain extent, this is the moment that he was talking about. But when I think back, exactly. So thank you for But I think it's funny. So one of the best things ever that I had was my boyfriend. So I have known him since I was 18. We both come from the same cult. And that has been, his family he's from the Bahamas. So he's from a different country. And then in his family, they were nothing like I was in terms of fundamentalism. Like it wasn't he was much more relaxed. His family was much more relaxed about it. So when I met him in college, which we went to the college that's associated with the cult. And so, when everything fell apart, by the time I was 29, we were still talking, and we weren't dating or anything like that at that point. But we were just friends. And so I'm talking to him, and he was the one that was like, listen, if you can find your way to Chicago, I'm sure I can find something up here for you. Like, you just got to find your way here. And when he graduated before I did, and he got a job in the city. So he had been there for quite a few years, had built up some contacts. And I'm so grateful that we were still friends at that time, because of the fact that I was able to, I don't know what I would have done something would have happened and it would have worked out, but I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have that connection, because he ended up being like such a huge support. I mean, he was still my best friend. Like at that time, we dated our freshman year in college, and when we broke up, we were still cool. Like we were just always cool. And I'm very grateful for that. So he was the one that really helped me so much at the beginning I didn't tell him that I had left the cult, because I wasn't sure if he had left. So I didn't want to, say too much about it. But at the same time, right. I was like, he could probably pick up on it, because once he was living in Chicago and he had a roommate. And so I stayed and I slept on the couch, y'all. And
for the record, Lexie slept on the couch.
Right, exactly. And so when we were out there, he basically saw that like I wasn't going to church. So that was kind of the beginning of like, is she going or is she not? And then I also saw that like the way he was living his lifestyle, like in the house, was also like, even the fact that I'm here, I'm on the couch. I'm a single woman. You're two boys in the house. Like, I'm not supposed to be here, So there was like his flexibility towards like what it seems like to me, where I'm like, oh, you're kind of living like you're in the world, that it made me question, well, maybe he's questioning things too. And so that was also a really helpful thing. And then his roommate, who was also part of the call as well, he was also in a space of like questioning things. So it gave us space to have conversations, and we would just be up, just trying to figure out, but what about this? And what about this? Just going through things. Wow, yeah. It was like boot camp for like
literally you all put yourselves through like psychological, like reconditioning essentially.
Yes. Yeah. And we had no idea that's what we were doing, because we were just trying to find the truth.
Like everything.
Yes. It was deconstruction camp. I mean, we would be up all night just trying to be like, well, but this doesn't make sense, because what about this? I'm so grateful for those nights. We would be exhausted. I would go into work. I got a job as a temp worker, and I would be exhausted because we would be up all night just trying to understand what we had been indoctrinated in. And so it was really fascinating. And if I didn't have that space, especially at that time, because by that time, now my family and I, there's no conversations happening during those months. I'm not speaking. I didn't even tell her that I left to go to Florida, because we weren't talking. I mean, go to Chicago from Florida. We weren't talking. So I was like, I'm not going to say anything. And then, so now most of my family, they weren't speaking to me either, because part of being part of the call is that, like, when people leave, it's not that you're discouraged from talking to them, but at the same time, you want to protect your energy because they might be agents of Satan. You know what I'm saying? Like, they might be being used. So the goal is, like, you maintain a relationship, but it's always with in mind that you're bringing them back to the church. So if that's not the goal, then there's really no reason to talk. And so that's kind of how it ends up being, where you get disconnected. So my best friends, they kicked me out of the group chat. They stopped talking to me. And these are women that I was talking to, like, all day, all the time. But now all of a sudden that I'm starting to question things. I remember at one time, and this was so funny, I just thought about this a couple of days ago, in our little friend chat that we had, I had asked a question about, like, have you ever thought about when Jesus was born, how the three wise men were following a star to find the baby? And my friend was like, yeah. And I was like, so do you think that it's possible for, like, stars to communicate with us? And I asked that question way back then. I didn't know, right? It's like, of course, the astrologer. And she immediately was like, no.
I'm like, if I'm going back, because I was raised in Christian, church, and, like, I'm going back and I'm thinking, like, to me, that is, like, the least important part of that story. Like, who's the person that's like, I'm like thinking, I'm like, okay, like, what about this? And, like, okay, there was, like, animals there. Like, what animals are that? Whatever. Like, of course, you, Lex, you're like, but the star, but about the star though. Like, I'm like,
tell me you're an astrologer without telling me you're an astrologer. Right? So I thought about that a couple of days ago, that I was like, that is so crazy that I asked that question, because why would I care about a star?
To me, I'm like, okay, like, yeah, of course they were following the star, like, big whoop, like, whatever, like,
right? So I just thought that was so funny when I thought about it. I was like, oh my God, how did I not know where I was headed? But it was like, those are the same sorts of things that were happening. So when my friends disconnected from me, the only community I had at the time was then my best friend, who had become my boyfriend, and his roommate. And so that was a big part of how I was able to get here, was just having those conversations, and then also being kicked out from my family, because now I have to, and my friends, it forced me to have to, like, I have to make friends at work now, but these are not from the cult. So, like, now our conversations are very different, and I'm becoming even more aware how different I am, and becoming more aware of, like, how limited my mind is. Like, all of these things are starting to, like, really come to, I was listening all the time. Every time I was at, like, lunches with workers, and with my coworkers, I would just be absorbing, because the conversations that they would have was just like, I would never have this conversation. I would never have it in mixed company. And you guys are just talking freely, boys and girls. And then second of all, just the way that you guys are dressed, and the way, like, what you expect and relationships, and what you expect as a woman, and just all these things that intuitively felt right to me, because those are the same questions that I was asking when I was a kid, that I was being called rebellious for even thinking. But at the same time, I've been covered in this mask of good Christian girl vibes. So now when I'm here out in the world having lunch, and you guys are just talking about movies that you've seen or songs that you like, and it's all with content that I was taught to think, like, it would make you guys these horrible people, but you're, like, really cool. Now, again, it's that clash of, this doesn't make sense. I've been taught to think that you guys are just awful, and, like, these music and lyrics are awful, and that they take over you, and that all this, like, I'm thinking you're supposed to be like, it's not that I thought that the world was possessed, but I thought it was more bad, And so it was confusing. And so when you have all those things kind of happening at the same time, once again, it's giving you permission to start questioning the reality that you grew up in, and start going, and this is Chicago, it's the city. So people are from all over. It's really nice. And so that was really what allowed me to start questioning things, and no one was questioning me for questioning them anymore. So, now I was like, I was allowed to, which then eventually Chicago, which is so crazy, was such a spiritual, like, again, I didn't know that I was having my Saturn return because I didn't know what that was, but I was 29 and 30. And so it's like, it was such a spiritual place for me. What ended up happening was eventually, because I'm still trying to make friends, I have no community, right? So I go to meetup.com to try to find friends.
Back in the day, y'all.
Right, back in the day. And when I went to this thing, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was a goddess dinner. And I was like, what is a goddess dinner? And I just liked that they were, because I was trained to think goddess and multiple gods are all really Satan's angels masking as these stories, right? So I have this negative connotation technically with goddess, but I also have this like curiosity about goddess because it just sounds really cool. And I was like, a goddess dinner? That sounds bad. And it sounds kind of like, what is that? So I didn't know how I was supposed to dress. Right? Exactly. And so what's so funny is when I went, it was at a public place. I'm trying to remember what restaurant. It was a super fancy restaurant. And when I first went there, because I wasn't sure how I was supposed to like dress, and I was so insecure, my clothes back then were so plain. So I was really afraid that I wouldn't look right. So I went first just to like see what they looked like. I got there early just so I could see before I actually announced myself because I was so scared.
Like, can we help you, miss? Like, no, I am not here for the event. I will be in about 20 minutes, but right now, no.
Exactly, but not right now. So once I saw that the people were just like normal, I was like, okay, I'm going to go. And I was so scared. Like, I didn't tell my boyfriend. I didn't tell him anything because I was still afraid that, like, I knew at that point now that he wasn't in the cult, but I was just not sure. Like, I'm intrigued by the word goddess.
I'm thinking you're thinking this is like an Eyes Wide Shut that you happened upon on meetup.com.
I'm genuinely in that space where I'm like, I am going into like such a taboo bad place right now, but so I can't tell anybody. That's where I'm at. Okay.
Meanwhile, also like simultaneously thinking like I could be kidnapped and like, you know, used for some type of satanic ritual. So let me not tell anybody because
that's exactly what, and you know what's so funny? I remember weighing those options because I was like, what if something bad happens to me? No one's going to know where I am. And my thought process was that one, I had left my meetup thing on my computer at my house. So if something does happen, you could see like the last thing I was searching was for meetup. Girl, I'm the Capricorn. I'm prepared.
I was like, and there you have it. If anybody had any questions about Lexie,
if I went missing, then you're going to walk in and right there. So that was my thought process because I could not admit to anybody I was going to go to this place, you know? And so it was wonderful. The girl that was leading it, she ended up being a Capricorn as well. Her birthday was the day after mine. So we connected on that. And I didn't know enough about astrology, but I just knew I was a Capricorn. So that was like, oh, you're a Capricorn, me too. And then at the end, the whole thing was just about meeting as women and encouraging. And I thought, wow, this is nothing like I thought it was going to be. It's so cool. And it's just so like empowering. I thought it was going to be, you know, goddess stuff, you know, I don't know, not knowing that that's goddess stuff. But in my mind, I was like, man, this is great. And at the end, she had us pull a card from a goddess deck. And I couldn't pull the card. I was like, no. That's going to be like a spirit and I can't do that, but I will eat this dinner and I will enjoy this. I'm not judging y'all, but I don't want to go to hell. You know what I mean? That was like my fear. So I didn't take it. But then this girl next to me, who also became a friend of mine as well, eventually, her name was Donna. She was like, I feel like you would love to go to this thing that I go to. It's called Sister Circles. And I was like, I don't know. I think she was pushing my buttons because she saw me not pick a card. So I don't know why she would invite me to a sister circle. But she was like, I really feel like it's something that you would enjoy. And I was like, oh, okay. Still kind of scared, curious, because I don't know what this is. Mm-hmm. But then the next week I went and girl, the terror. I thought I was in a true witchcraft circle, a seance type shit. The terror.
This is so hysterical for me listening to this part of your story because I know you now. You're like, oh, y'all, it's the full moon. Everybody got your crystals and your candles and your whatever. Like, you're making your moon water.
And now I'm sitting here like, well,
I was going to say, talk about a 180. Oh my goodness.
Completely different. Because if you knew me back then, oh my God, I was so naive and I was so terrified of everything. Like I couldn't even go into a metaphysical store. I remember the day that I went, it was April 7th. I remember the first day that I went, which I love because it's Aries. That was Aries season, the beginning of the astrological new year, but I didn't know that. But at the time, it was a big deal for me to even go to the metaphysical store because I thought if I went inside of a store that had crystals and things like that, and I mean, it sounds funny, but this is literally what I thought. I thought that if I go into those stores, spirits would follow me home. So that's why I could not see myself going into the store. I can't pick up this card deck because whatever's on that deck, that is a terrifying. Can you imagine if I pulled up the card and it was like Goddess Kali? You know what I'm saying? That would have terrified me.
So like, and we're done. And we're done with this. We're going back to Florida. Like this. Nope, they were right.
This is it. I have gone too far. My family was right. I'm a rebellious sinner. Because can you imagine? So I was so afraid of things like that. So once I went to the sister circle, that was so cool. But we were literally like, it was at a yoga studio and it was dark and there's candles in the middle. And then there's the cards and just.
I can just imagine you being like, be cool. Be cool. Be cool.
I was so scared and I was trying so hard because I didn't want to seem judgmental. That was my biggest fear. I was like, I don't want to judge anybody. And I didn't want people to see that I was terrified. Like I was so uncomfortable. And so even part of the sister circle, at one point, everyone shares, you know, what they're talking about. I was like, no, thank you. I was so terrified.
I'm also thinking about you passing up an opportunity to share. And that is also, I'm like, I'm sorry, are we talking about the same Lexie Wilson here? Like somebody being like, hey, would you like to speak in front of people? And you being like, no, thank you, I'm good.
Who is that? Who is she? It is crazy. I would have grabbed that mic so fast now. But back then I was just so like, I was just scared, but I'm so grateful.
You were doing it anyway. That is amazing.
That's what I was about to say. That I was like, I'm so grateful because I'm so grateful for that girl because that means like she was brave. She was going, I mean, you have to think about it in the context of being terrified of like losing your eternal soul. And she was willing to lose her eternal soul.
That's a lot more than just like some social anxiety.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's where it's like, it was so much deeper to go into that when you're thinking about the fact that I could end up in hell for this, but I have to. And the reason why I felt like I had to was my thought process was, if Jesus can read my heart, when Jesus comes down and saves us all and takes us to heaven, he's going to read that I wasn't being obedient. He's going to read that if I stayed in church and if I did all the things that I was supposed to do, quote unquote, then I was really doing it because I was afraid, not because I loved him. And so he would still reject me anyway. And yet now I didn't even find out the truth. And that was my perspective, that I was like, I'd rather go to hell trying to find out the truth. And then at least my heart, when Jesus looks at me, I hope that he would still reward me to heaven, not to hell, because he sees my integrity. But he will not take me to heaven if I was a liar the whole time, but I looked good.
And I mean, just to even have that thought process as like a young person, to me, like that's like very, very wise to be able to have that.
And I didn't know that at the time. I didn't think of it as wisdom.
Type of a thought process, because like even I'm like thinking that's like grand philosopher type paradoxical thinking, you know, to really be like, well, I could cheat the system if it looks good, but there is this loophole factor where this could go that way. And then I would rather do this than risk that. Like, wow. And that's, you know, and I mean, technically, obviously, like I wasn't there for the things that you were taught, but like technically that moment could happen at any time and you could be in pursuit of truth. And, you know, it's just kind of like, well, I hope I can figure this all out before time's up.
Right. And if that's not what the journey is about, the pursuit of truth and living up to the truth that you know, then what are we doing? Right? I
Right?
mean, is that not the argument? That's why we all are trying to figure out what we believe spiritually. So how can I say I'm a good old Christian if I know that this is not the truth for me, but I'm
Right.
living it because you guys, my parents and
You
my
told me
family and
to,
my friends told
essentially.
me to? Then how am I telling
And
the
like,
truth?
how is it yours if it was just
Right.
something that somebody put upon you?
Right. And that's not mine. So thank you for seeing that in me, because I'm like, yeah, I didn't see it at all like that. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, no, that is exactly right. And that's why I'm so grateful for that girl, because that takes so much courage that I didn't know at the time that I had. Like, I didn't see it as courage. I saw it as just, you're being hard on yourself all the time. And I felt so rejected and so unwanted. But like I said, I also feel like to a certain extent, all of my friends rejecting me, all of my family just making me feel unwanted was exactly what I needed to have the permission to say, well, listen, I don't got any friends anyway. I don't
You
got
have
any
nothing to
family
lose
anyway,
at
so I
that
might as well
point.
go.
Yeah.
Right. So that was what really started it off. Once I got to that sister circle, I met with my friend Shelly, and who's a Taurus, and I love Tauruses. And we got to know each other very well. And once I saw just like how powerful she was, how confident she was, she's very like, I'm positive she was a Viking in like a past life. She is truly a goddess. And she gave me permission because she was so amazing that I was like, if I could be like her, I want to know like what she's doing. And so that was what kind of,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that
Okay.
was what kind
So
of gave me permission.
what was Shelley doing? Was
Yeah,
Shelley
yeah.
doing something
Well,
to do
and
with
that's
astrology perchance?
right, right. And it was so funny. It wasn't that because she didn't do any astrology. She was really about leadership in sister circles. And that was really where she was showing up. But what stood out to
Ah.
me, because she was doing retreats as well, what stood out to me was that she was so spiritually honest and weird. And like did not care about it. And I loved it. I loved how weird her thoughts were, and that she did not care that you thought they were weird. It was almost like when she would talk to you, it was almost like she wanted you to be like, how weird can this get? Huh? And I love that vibe, because I was like, man, she really doesn't care.
Yeah, yeah.
you
Those people
know?
who are just very like ethereal beings, where they're like,
Yes.
yeah, and like how like trees have leaves, and then like
Yeah.
leaves have trees, like and
Right.
you're just like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like and they're like saying it like this makes complete and total like sense, right? And you're like, it
Like,
does, but I don't know how.
exactly. And that was her all the time. And for me, that gave me permission to say, not that I wanted to do exactly what she was doing, but I wanted the freedom that she had to be so weird and to be so spiritual and to take it so seriously. And that's the part of her being an earth energy, is that she takes what she does very seriously. And so because of that, it linked with my earth energy of I take life so seriously, sometimes to my downfall. And because of that, it was like, what is that for me? Because she has found it in this for her, where it's leading other women and it's creating spaces of safeness for them emotionally. What is that for me? Like, what is my weird thing? And so that's where I then started to experiment with Reiki, with crystals, with all these different cool things, which are a whole different story in and of itself, because all of that stuff was also terrifying to me too. But I was trying
Mm-hmm.
to place myself somewhere, and eventually found myself in the space of astrology, which is someplace that, as I shared, there were times in my life where I had given myself glimpses that astrology was going to be much more to me than just sneakily reading in the Cosmo magazines. But once I started to really connect with the fact that I see things through the stars. So when something goes off, I'm like, oh my goodness, well, Mars is opposing Neptune. Like I speak and think like that. It became clear to me that it's like, I really care about what's happening in the universe. And I really see that there's a direct
Yeah.
connection between our humanity and the nature of the planet in communication with the rest of
Yeah,
our
it's
galaxy.
literally like another language, and that is like
Mm.
the piece of this where like you're not just somebody who knows astrology or does astrology or can read astrology.
Yeah.
It is just so interwoven into like how you exist in the world. It's like some people, you know, are bilingual, multilingual, like whatever, they know like French, German, Spanish, like, you know, you know, like, you know, English, and you know, like star, like it's just, it's just everything. I, you know, when we were working in close proximity together, like I'd be like, yeah, you know, I'm just feeling like kind of like weird today, and be like, oh yes, of course, that's because of this and this, and then that makes this, and then there's that this and this going on, and so then tomorrow you're going to want to do this, and then have that happen, so that you could be prepared for this energy shift that's going to be coming up in 3 days. Okay, and
exactly. That is so.
I'm like, thank you, thank you so much. Also feel very validated right now, because you know I am
now, you know, you're not crazy,
very, like in tune, but I don't speak the language that you speak. So somebody being able to put like context and words like into that energy was so incredibly helpful. But it was just like, it's not like you were like, let me look this up or let me see, or I think. It was just like, you have this like direct connection to, you know, what's going on up there, and it's just gets like put into your brain.
No, honestly, that's what it feels like, because even when I'm doing my readings, what I started to realize before, when I first started getting into that world, I was going at it from a very, you know, get my books and do my research and do this. But over time, when I started meeting more and more with people, I started realizing like it is a download. Like I am actually just receiving, because I feel totally different when I get into that space, like completely. If I was in church, they would say I was caught up in the Holy Spirit, because I feel like that's what's happening when I'm in a session. A lot of times I'm just looking at the stars, and just, it's like my brain just connects it all. And so I totally agree with you that it is its own language, 1,000%. I still study because I love to study. So I still do that. But I have learned over the years now of doing my readings that a lot of it is very intuitive. And I have my own stories of that, in terms of like connecting to star seeds and having visions and things like that, that I feel like, oh, I know why now. And so I feel like it is literally like my language, it's just my life. I had to go through the things that I had to go through. And now that I understand my birth chart also, I'm a Capricorn. I have a lot of Capricorn in me. So because of that, there is most of my lessons were going to come through the family. It was going to come through the relationship with my mom. My Saturn is in Sagittarius, which means that there's areas of, when it comes to religion and control in that area, part of my life story was probably going to be leaving a cult, being part of a cult, or having some sort of relationship with religion where I was going to have some crisis of faith. That's just because it's in my birth chart. So once I understood that, again, that also allowed me to have forgiveness, because I recognized every part of this.
Like you signed up for it.
I signed up for it.
You decided this. Yeah.
And so this is where it's like, oh, this was part of it. And it was all to get to this. And the story's not done. So there's still even more to that, obviously. But it's like that at this point of my life, it feels like it was to help me get back to my language, which is the stars. I see the world through that. I see people through that, which also allows me to give so much more grace. I feel like it's made me so much more forgiving, because I recognize that each of us were literally our own little galaxies. We're literally little galaxies walking around the planet. It makes me so emotional when I think about that it's like, we're just walking around, just colliding with each other and all the different things. And you don't know what's going on in that person's galaxy. So you have to have compassion. You don't know what black holes exist in that galaxy, what explosions are happening, what's being created over there. You don't know. So you have to just be in a state of true love and grace. And when you find yourself triggered by their galaxy, try to figure out like what's happening in your galaxy. That's, like, I love all of it, because
it really backs up that whole thing's happening for you instead of to you. And really truly being able to align with that energy.
Right. And I think that it's because, again, I trust the universe so much now. I see it's brought me so much peace that I know for sure that things are truly happening for your highest good, for the highest good of the collective. It is not happening to you, to harm you, to take you down. So if you see everything through those eyes, then when you are going through the darkest nights of your soul, you recognize that you truly are the seed that's being sprouted. So it's not that you have been punched down so far in. You are the galaxy. So like sometimes it's going to get dark in this bitch, but like you're going to light up once again. You are going to big bang it out. You are going to like, it's going to happen. But at this time, what's necessary is not the big bang. What's this time as necessary is for you to be in that darkness and allow that darkness to be what you need to become the big bang at a later time. You know?
Oh,
right.
That just hit. And you know what, Lexie, I want to say, because like we're coming up on our time. Can I keep you for like a little bit longer?
Yeah, of course.
For, you know, like literally podcast editor, we're going to do this in a 2-part because I'm like, I'm like, but I have to finish the story. And like, I feel like a little kid where I'm like, I have to finish the story. And so if you have the time, I
have the time.
Okay, beautiful. Because I do as well. And so I would really love to be able to kind of go back into that, you know, so you meet your like, you know, Viking goddess friend. Yeah. But you're still like very much on the outside of all of this. And this is where I'm at this place in your story, like where I feel like this small child where like I'm seeing you now and like all that beautiful wisdom that you just shared with us. Right. But then I'm trying to reconcile you as you're existing here now today in the present moment with that version of you that was showing up to that sister circle. And that's where like, I'm like, okay, like, tell us more.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I feel you. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, no. And that was like, it's crazy because it's so funny how like change happens, but it requires so much bravery. That's really what that takes. And again, you're not going to feel brave in the moment. And I think that so much of what that is trusting where your intuition is truly leading you. Right. I had to trust that getting on Meetup was a fun way to make friends. I had to trust that whole goddess thing was not something that was going to be awful, but maybe it could be fun. You know, it's those little things. Like it wasn't, most of the decisions that I was making at that time had nothing but fear all around it, but it had just a little bit of, but what if it's fun? You know, that curiosity is essentially what saved me. Having that space to say like, but what if? Right. And at the same time, it's not like I said, I went to the restaurant early before the goddess dinner. So I could see if people were odd and dressed up in like, I don't know, whatever I would think is evil then, then it's like, then I could walk away.
You were doing nervous system regulation work before you even really knew what it was. I think that's where like we can be 90% fear, but then 10% faith. And we can lean into that 10%. We can orient ourselves towards that 10% to go in the direction of that 10%, even if it's a tiny little sliver. There's definitely things that we can do to help us be able to lean in or to just even orient ourselves in that direction.
Exactly. And you have to trust your curiosity at that point, because at that point, like I said, it's not like, I am so grateful for my boyfriend's support and for the community that he had, but I wasn't even exposing everything because it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to leave the cult, right? But it's another, which is already a big thing, but it's a whole nother thing to say, I'm going to start looking into like spiritualism. Right?
That's a because I'm like thing. Thinking like, I'm like, you wouldn't even pull a card at a community event, you know? And so, and here you are telling me about past lives and connecting to starseeds and like, you know, living your life in accordance with your birth chart. So I'm just like, I'm literally on the edge of my seat.
Right. So that's why it's like leaning into that curiosity is what again, it was so slow. It took me years to even get my first deck because again, I thought if I even go into the store, right, I'm going to catch a demon. So I can't go to the store and pick up a deck. And I don't want to even have the deck because then the deck has all these images that are all demons on the deck. You know what I mean? Like that's the thought process that I'm
Right.
having in the
Yeah.
moment. And therefore I couldn't start there. For me, the starting was the community, right? Because at least if I was in the
Yes.
space of
Okay.
people, right, then that would give me ability to go, okay, so it's okay to ask that question because no one rejected her when she asked. It's okay to
So you were like
feel this
literally
or to
going
move.
out and getting your own social proof.
Right. Oh, that's a really great way to say that because yeah, that's something that I didn't look at it that way, but that's literally what was happening. But also now that I'm looking at it right now, oh my God, I love this. That is literally, so when you're looking at your birth chart, one of the areas you can look at to see where you find ease and luck is Jupiter. My Jupiter is in Aquarius. So Aquarius is all about community spaces, right? So I just realized as I'm talking to you right now that it's like, wait, I was going by my Jupiter, going to community spaces where it would allow me to expand. This
You
is how
heard
I
it
live my
here
life, and
first,
I'm always
everyone.
mind blown.
This is like like we never stop learning, we never stop growing, our consciousness never stops expanding. Like this is
Right.
why it's so important to like have these conversations because
Yeah.
we're all catalysts for one another. So just by
Mhm.
me asking a question, it brings something up in you, and then you can
Right.
use your knowledge to make another connection. And you know what? There's probably going to be multiple clients where you're going to look at their Jupiter differently now because of knowing that connection in your own story.
Exactly. So now I'm realizing like that was why I was able to do that. I didn't know that, definitely didn't know that. But now that I know my chart, it's because there is where if I go into community, I do feel a sense of like, okay, now this makes it safe for me. So that's
Mm.
why it became easier. And I went to a sister circle. It was 2 hours and it was every other week. And I was already, it was a 2 hour session. I was about, this was deep in Illinois, honey. These were the farmlands where I was driving from. I was from all from Chicago all the way out to the farmlands.
Talk about
And it
leaning
was
into some faith. You're literally going into like some cornfields to do some like witch shit.
literally
Like,
to do a witch thing.
I think I'd be scared too.
And let me tell you, we were doing some witchy things, girl. There was one point when it was a full moon. Shelly had us out in the backyard. Again, this is corn land. Okay. So it was real corn stuff. Had us in the backyard of this yoga studio, yelling and howling at the moon.
Amazing.
Girl, can you? And I was like, this is what I'm talking about with her, that I was like, you don't care? Like, don't you? What about people? What if they think we're weird? And she's like, let them think we're weird. And I was like, this is crazy. And I loved it.
Wild, but I like it.
I loved it. I was like, because she doesn't care. And like, yes, I might look really insane, but what are you going to do? There's like 12 of us out here. You're not going to come for us all, So that was where it became easier. If everybody else around me is howling like fucking wolves, I'm howling.
To Shelby though, because I see you as somebody who truly is like out there and like you are like zany, off the wall, saying like whatever. Like I look at you, you give me permission to be weird,
Wow.
So you give me permission to be loud and out there and ostentatious, like. And I'm thinking like, wow, like there was a time where like you were being given that permission by somebody else. And now you are an example of being that permission giver for others.
Thank you for that. That makes me emotional because I've never thought of it like that at all. Because I don't see myself in that way. And so thank you for saying that, because to me, Shelly is still such a beautiful soul and gave me so much permission. So to imagine being that for someone else is like significant, considering the fact that I wasn't like that at all in the beginning. I was so scared of everything. I remember at one point she had a retreat and it was the first spiritual retreat that I've ever gone to. The only other spiritual retreats I've gone to were with the cult. So totally different vibes. And the first night that we were there, again, we're meeting in this was in Milwaukee, cornfields of Milwaukee. So this stuff is just witchy and scary to me. And the first night we had to do this soul gazing thing. I couldn't look at any, we were supposed to be in the circle and then just catch someone's eye and look. I put my head down immediately. The whole time we were there for 20 minutes, I think, doing the soul gazing exercise. Everybody, catches somebody. Shelly said that she kept her face up the whole time looking at me, wanting me to look up. I could not look up because I was so scared of the significance of what is this spiritual soul gazing thing.
Wow.
And it
And
was
especially because you've been
terrifying.
trained your whole life not to be seen.
Yeah. And especially not to be seen. So now you have it. And this was the first night of the retreat. So on my first night, and I've only known these girls by going to the sister circle, right? So I know them, but I'm not like, and now I have to have you
Right.
guys looking at my soul when I'm not
Like I'm
ready
not
for that.
naked. Like
Right.
naked.
Naked.
Like,
I know that. I would have rather she said for us to get naked than do that. That was, I'm telling you, you guys try a
that's like
soul
next
gazing
level
exercise.
naked.
Yeah, it's serious. But let me tell you, by the end of that retreat, I think it was from Thursday until Sunday night. We did the soul gazing thing, and I was able to look right into her eyes the whole time. That was and she got emotional. I got emotional because I knew what it meant. I knew that it meant that by me, I was now ready to not be so afraid. That at that point, I was like, I want to start showing up in my truth. I want to read books that give me permission and educate me on bigger thoughts than what I've had. I'm ready to leave behind the things that don't resonate with me anymore, even if it means losing my soul, because now at this point, I just want to know the truth. That is it. And that was at that moment, I believe that retreat was the full beginning of the true transition into now I'm going to say what I think. I'm going to start wearing crystals, which I did. I started wearing more jewelry, which again goes completely against the religion that I was in. I was starting to wear jewelry, but I wasn't really putting on gaudy jewelry at that point. But now I was like, I'm wearing gaudy jewelry because I like it and I think it's cool. I want loud colors. So I started changing my clothes. I started and it didn't happen right away. It was very slow, but I do think that moving from just being the girl that was going to random meetups or going to random meditation studios just to see what's this about, or going to the sister circle, which like I said, that sister circle was an hour away from the city. And then it was 2 hours of being in the sister circle every other Monday. And so I would literally get off of work, and then I got to get there on time because, it's a sister circle. So you can't just be late. So it's I got to get there. I got to get ready. And I would be there late, still drive back into the city to go to sleep and get ready for work. I was always tired Tuesday morning because I was exhausted from all the traveling. And that traveling was just perfect because it was terrifying because you're driving in the cornfields, this huge ass moon, is looking at you. One time I turned off my light while I was out there, pitch black. I mean, you can't see anything out there. So I was really going to the mountaintop, to get this learning. And so once I got invited to the retreat, Shelly was like, I think you should come. And again, I was scared because of the whole spiritual thing. You want me to, and now girls, I don't know you. I come from a world where I've known everybody since I was a child. And these are also the children are friends of my mom's. So my mom went to summer camp with these people and now there's their kids. You know what I'm saying? So I don't just go
so that
sleeping.
whole because I'm thinking I grew up going to summer camp, I grew up going to summer camp and I would be sleeping in a tent with a bunch of random people. I didn't know
we did not do that.
I didn't know the other kids. I didn't know any. So for me, going on a retreat is okay, fine. I'm going on a retreat. It's really not a big deal. And so I'm putting this into context in the sense that you are you're already away from everything that you've known, living in Chicago. Right. And then you're going to go away with these people that you do not know them. And you're going to be going away with them, sleeping, occupying space, being away from everything. And again, it just, to me, yes, we can look back at this and say wow, that version of you was so very brave. But at that time you were just doing it damn scared.
We're damn scared for reals, because everything that this whole thing is completely goes against. Truly, my nervous system is not set up to hang out with strangers. I've been taught that strangers are truly dangerous people. They want to snatch your soul from you. So I'm not supposed to, when I go to summer camp as a kid, I'm going to summer camp again with people who my mom grew up with their parents. So we know each other. You can't do anything to me that somebody
right.
ain't
You literally went to a college that was associated with you probably went to college with the same people that you had been going to school with 100%. Your whole life. So that is just that
my
whole
roommate.
thing.
My first roommate in college was we had lost contact, this is even funnier. We had lost contact, but when my mom was pregnant, her mom was pregnant, and we all went to church together back in the islands, which is originally where my family is from. And so is her family. Her grandma and my grandma were best friends. So here it is back in the islands, they're best friends. Eventually, they have kids. Kids move to New York, which is where I'm from. They meet, they're doing their thing, they get pregnant, and we come along, we lose contact. But then who's my first roommate? The same girl that I've known since when we were in utero.
Literally 3 generations of like close friendship.
Connection. Right. Across countries and states. Because when we go to college, we're in college in Tennessee. This is what I'm saying. The world that I come from is very small. So even when you're from the different countries, right, the world is so small that you know this person. So they're not gonna we don't hurt each other the same way. Crime and stuff like that doesn't happen in it does, but it doesn't happen in our world for real, because I know your daddy. You can't, you know what I'm saying? And so and the world that we come from is so intertwined that there's a lot more accountability. So there's just more trust. Even if I were even now living here, if I were to go to a church that was right here, I already know that somebody in there is going to know somebody from my family or possibly be related to me through somebody. The world is just so small from where I come from because it's a cult, it's small. So because of that, there's just so much more trust. So to go from that to now people that I'm not even telling people where I am. And right, exactly. Right. Again, not telling people where I am.
Of truth. I
don't recommend this.
Could end up on 2020, could end up enlightened.
That's so could offend me. Really, truly. So I don't recommend this, guys. But it's I'm not telling people
Please
where I am.
Please share your locations with your friends.
Please.
PSA.
PSA. So that's where it's to go from that to now going into full danger in my eyes, spiritually and physically. That was crazy. But at the same time,
that's just so, I'm sitting here. I'm so glad that you did this because you're just such a gift. But I'm also thinking how the heck did you do that? Because I have a hard time even just regulating my nervous system to say no to people because I'm recovering people pleaser, let alone being I've never been around anyone other than the people that I've grown up with. And so you know what? I'm going to
I'll just
not tell anyone where I'm going and go off
and be these people identify comfortably as witches. Let me go hang out with them. What?
Yeah, in the middle of nowhere, not tell anybody anywhere that I'm actually going to be. Yeah, this just honestly ended up being a great idea, but hearing it sounds like an absolutely terrible idea.
And honestly, when I'm saying it to you, I'm thinking that too, because at the time, I've never really put it together this way in my head, because to me, I was just doing it. I'm just okay. But now when I'm putting it together, I'm whoa, Lexie, that could have ended so badly.
It could have, but I also have to feel there was part of this that you had that divine protection, you had that divine calling.
That's how I believe.
You had that part of you that knew what was and was not in alignment because it had been 100%. Present for you your whole life. You had been the child that was questioning things that were no, that doesn't feel right. So then you did know what did feel right, even if it didn't make sense. Right. Yeah. And I think that's where, yes, when we're talking about it in a very black and white context, that sounds like a terrible idea. Why the heck would you even do that? But I have to believe that there was that little voice that just calling, that pull that a lot of us experience when we're trying to find that alignment with our soul purpose that was leading you, directing you, guiding you. So you felt that sense of safety or almost security.
Yeah.
Where yes, you were scared, but it also felt right.
It felt right. And I think you said that so well, girl. That's really what that is, because that's how I live. So it has to be that at that time, that is exactly what I was doing. It was terrifying, but it felt right. And so I just kept trusting the curiosity. I kept trusting the fact that I felt safe with Shelly. I didn't feel like she was a bad person. I felt like all the other sisters were also so amazing. I admired so many of them because of just how willing, Like they were so free. Their spirits were so free. And I loved that. I love the eclecticness, and the weirdness is what stood out to me, because I was so used to coming from a world where everybody had to be quote unquote normal. Right. So that's what stood out to me, that they weren't trying to be normal. They wanted to be identified as women who howled at the moon. They wanted to be identified as women who sat in circle and danced like nobody was looking, and really danced like no one's looking. You can tell the difference. Okay. And when we would have our sister circles where we're just like, just go with, and we would have these things called kirtans, I think. And we would sing. Oh my God, that is the most beautiful experience, because I love to sing. And one of the things that I miss about church even now is singing. And kirtan, you get to sing these songs, but the songs are not like, it's not like when you're in church and you have the hymn and you're like, sometimes it's like, in this, it's like, sometimes it's just like syllables. It's just sounds. And so it's the weirdness of it that made me be like, people are just feeling, like they're just expressing feelings. And I loved that. I loved it. I just thought, if I can be weird here, like I want this all the time. Like I want this. So that's where I think that that's probably I'm now realizing now that cocoon that I was in was what helps me to birth who you see in front of you, And just a little known fact here, in astrology, there's different types of astrology. There's one called astrocartography. And recently I found out that with astrocartography, what it does is it looks at how your birth chart relates to different locations on the planet. So you can see, like, if you're in certain areas, certain aspects of your chart will be activated. And so, for example, and this has literally happened to me, I met my boyfriend on my Venus line. The Venus line is associated with falling in love. People there might think you're even more attractive and more beautiful effortlessly. And that's literally where we fell in love. And then what is interesting is when I found out about Chicago is a very highly spiritual place for me. And so again, did not know this until just probably 2 months ago, that because of the fact that I was in a zone that triggers spirituality in me, it would make sense that it birthed this safe cocoon for me to just grow spiritually. Isn't that crazy? I know. Astrology is amazing.
I'm speechless right now. That is like so cool. Like that is right? And like to
Mind
me,
blown.
It's just evidence. Like it's so much of us existing in this space it's the unseen. It is faith. Yeah. It is, and that's where to me, it doesn't really matter how you identify truly. Yeah. There is a huge element to being a spiritual person that is just faith. It is this just belief in there being some other thing at play here other than like we live, we die, and then that's it. And being able to put evidence behind it, right? To me, when I hear you say that, I'm like, oh, well, then that makes sense as to why your soul chose to be born at such and such time, at such and such place. And that you felt, you got that calling to go to Chicago at that particular time. Like you could have had friends anywhere. You could have gone anywhere, but that was where you had, at that point in your life, you had like literally one soul connection. So like that was like,
right.
Like,
so that's
like that was it. It's not like you had option A, B, C, or D. It's like, well, I have this, or I have like literally nothing, and that seems better than nothing.
And I'm about to get evicted, so I literally have nothing.
Right. I like literally have nothing. And so, and that's just where like it was all to me. I'm like hearing you say this. I'm like, well, it makes it so obvious that this was predetermined. Like your soul was just like, okay, I'm going to come here and I'm going to live life and I'm going to do it in this way so I can do these certain things and live out this particular purpose. And if I'm able to kind of like hit these, milestones, it's going to like, give me, if anyone's ever played Mario Kart, right? And like you get like that little boost, it's like you're like going along and like you can get that little like boost and it like puts you a little bit further. You get that little boost and it like puts you further. And I feel like that's when we actually get to these little like nuggets of a checkpoint where it's almost like our soul is given a trinket to help it remember its truth. Right. And it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, like I've collected this thing and that helps my soul remember this piece. And I've collected this
Mhm.
thing and it's helped my soul. Because
It
we're
really
not
is Mario
learning
Kart.
anything new.
Yeah, because
We're
it's
not
nothing
learning
new.
anything new.
Mm-mm. Your soul already knows. And I say that all the time with my clients, where it's like so many times when I'm talking to them, they're like, man, this like feels so validating. Even in your languaging, what you're telling me is, I know this already. That's why it's valid. I can't validate something that isn't already inside of you. So you know
Mm-hmm.
it. All I'm doing is creating the mirror, the space, asking the questions, whatever is necessary for your soul to remember. That's my purpose. That's why I'm here to help guide you through that. And essentially, that's exactly what's happening even now on this call with me and you, where you asking me these questions is helping me to even put together that I'm like, wait a minute, this went with this went with that. That's why. So it's literally happening as we're recording, that moment of recognizing it's taking those little steps, even with the fear. But you, again, ultimately the spiritual journey requires faith at some point, and
Mm.
faith only exists with the idea that this shit is going to be scary. I don't know what's going to happen. Right. Because
Right? Like
faith
if
is
you knew it
not
was going to
knowing.
happen, it wouldn't require any faith. Like that's just,
Right. Exactly.
and that's and to me, that is such it just makes sense for the recipe, right? Because if we
Mhm.
come here and part of our coming here means that we're signing up to forget, we are
Yeah.
agreeing to forget. So that
Mhm.
means that if we're agreeing to forget, then part of the
Mhm.
journey has to be the remembering, right? Like,
Remembering. Oh, girl.
why would we forget if it wasn't for us to then remember? But the space
Remember.
between the forgetting and the remembering, that's
Yeah.
where faith comes in, right? Because we don't
Exactly.
have the knowing, we don't have the evidence yet, we don't have the
Yeah.
supporting, backstory, if you will, to be able to go
Right.
into it, to be like, okay, yeah, like I
This
know
is
what's
it.
going to
This is where
happen.
I
I
start.
remember this is this. It's
Yeah.
that trust. And I think that that's
Yeah.
really what connects our souls back to whatever was before and whatever comes after and whatever's
Right.
going on, outside of this like 3D stuff. It is that
Exactly.
very deep knowing that cannot be stripped away from us, even though
Mhm.
we made that commitment to forget. That's
Right.
faith.
Right. That's faith. Oh, I love you just wording it all together so well. But I just like, yes, that's faith. And ultimately, in order for you to find your thing, to find your purpose, to find the thing that feels truly like, oh, I'm alive, really alive, is you have to have that faith. You have to be scared. You have to do it anyway. You have to only
Mm.
have 2% of that faith and say, I'm going to go. I'm just going to make it happen. You have to do that, because if you don't begin, there will be no clarity. There will be no, you're just walking around this world existing. And
Yeah.
that's what we see with the
Right. There is
majority of
no
people.
remembering, right? Like
Right.
that's
There
where
is no
like
remembering.
if you're just kind of like la 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 la, like you got your head down, you got your like hands over your ears, and you're just like, I'm just gonna exist as a human. Which you know what,
Yeah.
that's fine. Like if that's what
Right.
you
Because
want
some
to
of us,
do this
that's our
time around,
destiny now.
if you want to take a
Mhm.
break and you just want to like do the meat suit thing, like by all means, punch your time
Right.
card, drink your beer after work, go to the sports games on the
Exactly.
weekend, whatever. Like if that's what you want to do this time around, absolutely love that for you. But for
Right.
those of us who don't have that option, right, because we woke
Right.
up very early or we're
Yeah.
waking up now, and
Yeah.
once you wake up you can't go back to sleep, it
You
doesn't work
can't.
that way. So
That
like
doesn't work.
for those people who are in this in between,
Yeah.
that's where this message of you really only need to have like 2% faith, just
Yeah.
2%, just orient yourself that way and just know that if it feels right, even if it
Right.
doesn't make sense, or even if you're
Yeah.
questioning it, or even if everything you were told tells you it's quote unquote wrong, but it
Right.
feels right in your soul, in your body, something about that is pulling you towards that, you
Right.
can lean into that and know that there's
Mm.
something for you there, even
Yeah.
if it's a negative experience. And
Right.
that's the other thing
Yeah.
that we don't always talk about in terms of our soul
Mm-mm.
remembering, because some of
Yeah.
these lessons are not wrapped up with pretty bows.
No.
That's not
No.
always the case.
Yeah. And sometimes that's part of it. My whole life is not a pretty bow, and people don't understand it. Half the time I don't either. But I also know that part of my life is not having a pretty bow. And I signed up for that. There's a reason I am a heavy Capricorn. I am meant to go through the mountaintops and go through them all the time. And I designed myself to be able to go through it all. So in that
Mm,
sense, that it's like the negative, when you feel like, oh man, this is taking me out of alignment, sweetie, that is the alignment. Like this is supposed to suck, And now it's there's medicine here, because there are lessons that are available in the sucky part that you can't get in the great part. You don't even know what the great part is if there is no sucky part. So like, it sucks, girl. But the reason that you're aware that it sucks is because at one point it was great. So
yes, and that's because that's that's the spiritual weightlifting, if you will, right? Because if there's no resistance, how can you really know how strong you are? If there's nothing for there to be difficulty around, how are you going to know what it is that is actually in alignment or not in alignment? Because every time we veer out of alignment and it doesn't feel right, that exercise and going back to it, that's actually how we strengthen our intuition.
Amen.
That's actually how we are able to stay in alignment. It's like, you know, you still go into a chiropractor, maybe you're seeing them like 3 times a week because your back doesn't know how to be straight. But then like eventually you're going to only see them like once a month or once every other month because like you got that alignment going. Your body's like, oh, this is how it's supposed to go. But in the beginning, it's a lot of that spiritual weightlifting where it's the resistance, it's the picking it up and being like, okay, can I go a little bit heavier? Can I do a little bit more? And being able to make that commitment to going in and having a relationship to the resistance, that's actually what helps us to be stronger in this whole journey.
In the whole thing. And that's what helps you to then, that part of that strength is that optimism, that hope.
Yes.
Right? Because that's where it's like, that's why now when I have the parts of my story that aren't so pretty, I have been doing the spiritual weightlifting. I know the necessity of it. I know the necessity of the resistance. I know that even when I have my moments when I am in a space of anger and unforgiveness, I don't judge myself for that unforgiveness and that anger. That was meant to come to me at this moment to give me a message that my joy cannot give me. So I need to feel this anger. I need to, it all belongs. And this is why, again, I learned that through astrology. And you want to know why? Because part of that is you have those darker houses in your astrology chart, the Scorpio, the Pisces. These are these hidden spaces, right? But if we don't have that energy, then how can we know the lighter spaces of the Sagittarius and the Cancer?
Without
and the
the dark, there is no light. Like we need to have that balance.
You need to have
be able to exist in both and welcome and love both. It really, truly does all belong. And I think that that's where it's a lie of humanity where we're like, no, only focus on the positive, be happy all the time. That is, first of all, nervous system regulation aside, that is ridiculous to think that you're going to be happy all the time. That's an elevated state of emotion. Maybe like peaceful, content, like, you know, we could probably hang out there a little bit more often, but truly we're like hyper fixated on wanting things to be easy because I think we're running away from the truth of the human experience, which is for it to be hard, which is for it to embody both the dark and the light, and for us to be able to exist in those spaces with a lot of neutrality, not placing positive or negative on one or the other, just to be able to exist and to be.
Yes. Oh, girl. I hope y'all got that. That was a whole word right there. Write it down. Put it in your journals, people. That was free coaching. That was amazing. Because yes, that's exactly right. Where it's like, it's being in that neutral space. Because if you have that space, all of a sudden the positive is the negative and the negative is the positive. So and that's the key. It's not about going so far over to the joy or so far over to the depression that you're going back and forth between the two. If you're in that space, you're kind of missing the point. It's actually to be neutral through it all, because there's a season and time for every one of those emotions, and they all have different messages at different times, and they all are of value at different times. Your depression might be saving you from certain things that you didn't know until after the depression is gone. Then you will realize, you know what I'm saying? So that's where it's like, we don't want to rush through this. We don't want to feel like, what's wrong with me? Can't I? Girl, nothing's wrong with you. Something's coming up that needs to be seen. And you cannot see this in your joy. You need this now. So let it all be of use to you, because all of it is useful. And again, it's part of the human experience. So in order for you to truly understand what it means to be human, you must understand grief. You must understand depression. You must understand abandonment. You must understand all these things, because it's part of being a human. But I get it. It's hard, which is why have these teachers
because
and guiders.
We're told that like it's negative. But I think also the piece that I'm also pulling out for you is that you were born with this beautiful innate curiosity, right? And like that's where we get to just be curious about these things. When depression is showing up for us, when joy is showing up for us, like, it's okay to be like, that's interesting. Like, what's going on here? Not to, oh my God, I'm depressed. I can't be depressed, or I shouldn't be depressed, or what's wrong with me? I'm depressed. It's just like, okay, this is like, the state of, consciousness that I'm experiencing right now. Like what's actually going on? What's coming up for me? And again, not placing that judgment on it and being able to alchemize every piece of our experience with love. With love, right? Love the depression, love the joy, love the sadness, love the grief. And that's, I lost my father very suddenly. And that's something where like, I'm leaning into that in the sense of like, I'm in deep grief, but I'm also so grateful that my grief is so deep, because I know that I really loved my father so much, and I had such a good relationship with him, and he was such a good man, and I'm proud of his legacy. And so I miss him being here, because I enjoyed when he was here on the physical plane. And so I'm able to hold both such gratitude for the depth of that grief, but then also have it be very uncomfortable at the same time. But I don't wish it away, because to me, that depth of grief is equal to the height of my joy.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. Oh, that makes me want to hug you, because yes, you're exactly hugs, because you got it. Like, that's it. That's where it's like, we don't want to push that away. And we've seen that. We've seen people go through such hardship and push it away, and it ends up destroying all the other areas of their life. It destroys their own soul. It destroys their joy. And all of a sudden it's like they can't get out of it. And it's because they're trying to push the grief away. You have to let it in. And I know it feels like you're going to break. You are going to break. You've got to break. Like, you've got to feel it all, because at the same time, that's the love. That's the proof. That's the existence. That's the weight of this person's soul in your life. Like, that's the evidence. So we don't want to push it away, but again, if we don't know how to sit with the feeling of it, which is what most people don't know how to do, we don't know how to sit in that energy. So it destroys us, and we fear the breaking, and then we fear the fear of it all. So we just stay in this place with our heads down, feeling lost, feeling confused, feeling disconnected, not realizing that it's because we are not trusting even the parts that feel negative. We're not trusting that those things are also of value. We think it's not part of our story. Yes. This is out of alignment, right?
Yes.
No, it's not. It's part of it,
It's part of it. Being a human is messy and dark as much as it is, easy and light. It is both things. And I think that's where, when we are able to embrace all of it truly, like, be all like, come here, grief, come here, depression, you old rascal, like, I love you so much, when those things show up, to be like, oh, you again, okay, like, what's going on this time? It's just, you are able to interact with things from a place of like that. Fear is even okay. I tell this to my clients all the time. Like, fear is our friend. Fear is showing up because we're still a biological organism that has a directive to survive. And fear is like, excuse me. I'm not entirely sure that going into this unknown situation is going to result in our staying aliveness. So if we could not do that, that would be really cool. Okay. So can we just never do anything new or change oriented? Right? Cool. Like,
let's do that.
Right?
Thank you.
And that's where, like, we have to be like, oh, fear, you're so silly. It's okay. Come here. Actually, we're just going to go on a retreat with our new witch friends in the middle of nowhere. And I know you feel like we're going to probably end up dead, or our soul's going to get snatched or whatever. But we're actually, you know what? I can't tell you exactly why, but we're going to be okay. We're going to be fine. I promise. I could be wrong, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay. So I just need you to get on board with me. Just come on the bus. Come on. And
it's literally how you have to do it. You have to do that, honestly, because especially like when I think about now that I'm aware of my emotions like that, that is kind of how I do things. And it's funny, the movie, no, because what I got that from? Inside Out.
Yes, because, that's actually like, as I'm doing that, I'm like, literally, I'm like, yeah, that's my personification of fear. Like, when I'm talking to my fear, I see fear as this like tiny little nervous, anxious child who's like really unsure, like broccoli might kill us. We're really not sure about it. It's just kind of like up to me to be like, it's okay. It's just a vegetable.
Right, exactly.
Weird, and it tastes funny, and it smells like farts when you cook it, but it's gonna be fine.
But it's gonna be okay. No, yeah, that's literally how you have to have that thought about it, because it's like, even, spoiler alert, but it's like, even with the movie, what got them through was sadness. Sadness was what got them through. So it's like, you have to sit. It wasn't joy. She was trying her hardest, but she wasn't the one that got them through. So at the end of the day, it's like, you have to speak to that sadness, speak to that fear, and then say, like, you validate the emotion, but then it's like, okay, but we're going to go. I can't tell you why. I know it's good, but we're going to do it, and then you go and you follow that curiosity.
And that's essentially, that's when faith shows up. Faith is the one that gets to come in and be like, I don't know why it's going to be fine, but it's going to be fine. Okay. Like, we got snacks on the bus. Come on, just get on the bus. It's all right.
Exactly. So that's basically where I think that, and now I realize now that I'm like, I think it was that was a big part of what helped me to transition into being in this self of, again, it wasn't fast, it wasn't easy, and it wasn't so clear cut, but it was definitely those little things that kind of led to me getting to this place where I could have the courage to start. And even now with astrology, I would only say, and I've been doing readings for like 2 years, right? I think it's been a while, but like I have been doing, because but I think
you were like, when I crossed your path, I think you were just really starting to like lean into doing it professionally. And that was just, it seems like such a long time ago.
I know, right? But that's because we were going through COVID.
Happened.
Right.
Yeah, that's it's so strange, but it really, in the grand scheme of things, wasn't
that long ago, right?
Long ago.
Right. And so you think about it, it's like, no, that wasn't that long ago. And so up until that point, I'm still in this place basically where I'm still trying to figure out, who am I? What do I believe? How comfortable am I spiritually, like showing up as a teacher? Like, can I be the Shelley? I'm not sure. So technically it's like, when we cross paths, I'm still asking those questions. So by the time that astrology really kicks in, I'm still scared of astrology. You know what I'm saying? Because I haven't established that as like my identity. This is just something I'm curious about and still unsure if like, can I do this? You see what I mean?
Wow. So it was still just a thing that was like tugging on your sleeve. Cause I tell that to people all the time. Cause people are like, I don't know, like, should I learn about essential oils? Should I learn about crystals? Should I learn about tarot? Should I learn about astrology? Should I learn about human design? I'm like, well, what do you want to learn about? Like, what are you the most curious about? What are you the most interested in? Like, me personally, I identify as a very spiritual person, but like, I have the oils and the cards and the crystals and the everything. But like, for me, a lot of my spiritual practice, like when I connect to, people's spirit guides, I light this little candle right here, like literally just light like that is my practice. I light that candle and I'm like, hey guys, what's up? And then we have a chat, and then I thank them, I blow out the candle, and that's it. And that's all I've been instructed to do so far. Obviously, like I've learned things in terms of like shadow work, and I enjoy Kundalini yoga and chanting and like sound here. There's like different pieces that are coming in, but in terms of like your modality or your way to communicate to spirit, right? Like that is something that it's not really something I think you pick. I think it's something that you, again, like you remember
100%. I think a lot of people on their spiritual journeys, that's what we're doing, right? That's why we're so like, oh, where's the crystals and where's this? We're trying to figure out like, what's the thing that I remember before this, And so ultimately, and it evolves as you evolve, And so that's where it's like, ultimately you find, we still love all the things. Like you said, we still have the essential oils and the crystals and the things, but you might have something where you feel more comfortable talking with your spirit guides and connecting with other people's spirit guides. And maybe that's your thing. Or maybe you really, really love reading energy through cards and through different modalities, or even like physical things. So maybe you like holding other people's belongings, and because it gives you their essence. And so that's how you're able to connect to them. There's so many different gifts that we all have that we can use, and we do it so uniquely. So even if you have somebody who also talks to the stars just like me, she talks to the stars in an entirely different way than I talk to the stars. So
it's like a different dialect, right? It's like same language, but like different dialect. And that's different where like, dialogue. I can't even tell you how many times I've looked up like my chart, or like my friends have been like, okay, so your sun means this, your rising means this, your moon means this. Can I like hold on to that information? No. And I think it's just because like I'm not meant to, like that's not my language to be able to communicate in this space. But then it is yours. And so that's where like
Yeah.
it takes a community. And I tell people like
Yes.
you can have a therapist and a coach and an astrologer and a somatic healer and an energy worker and a
Right.
whatever. Like everybody gets to complement one another because
Right.
healing is so multidimensional and so multi-layered.
Yeah.
And being able to know that there's people that you resonate with, right? And that's part of the
Mhm.
beauty of social media is like you can
Yeah.
follow 20 different astrologers, but then you're going to be like,
Yeah.
you know, Mount Lexie, I just keep coming back to her page. I really like her energy. I
Right.
really, you know, okay, she's doing a sale right now. I think, yeah, I
Right.
want to do that. I want to do that with her. And it's not
Yeah.
about like who you think is going to be the best or whatever. It's about who
Mm-mm.
actually is in alignment for you to
For you at this
receive
time.
from.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like, that's why it's like, there's no competition with that because the message comes through so many us. Like, yes, this is an individual journey, but the individual journey only matters because it's part of the collective. So there's no competition here because we're like, I benefit from her existence. So how can I say, don't trust this astrologer, do this, do that, because I'm so much better? There is no better when I'm literally she's part of me and I'm part of her as well. So in that sense that, yes, it's like, no, you have a coach, you have a somatic therapist, you have this, you have that, you have that. That's normal because you're part of the collective. So it's not just your individual journey. And it also releases the like pressure to be it all. I don't have to know it all. I know my stuff and that's it. And even then I'm still learning my stuff. So I don't need to sit here and try to learn every aspect of all the things. That's not my journey. And so that's where it's like, what I need is to be in community with people who are gifted and aware of who they are. That's all. As long as you are, which is why I do my job, because I want you to know who you are so we can make this vibration higher, girl. That's all. You know, I benefit from that as well because we live on this planet. We are part of that collective. So in helping you to find who you are and what you're doing, I also win with that too. And in me staying in my lane and doing what I'm doing and not focusing on competing or anything of that nature, I will also benefit and so will the rest of the collective. So I think like that's where it's like, you know, you gotta, and it changes all the time who you resonate with because your vibration is always changing and there's different timelines for you to jump on. So when there's certain times in your life where you're in this vibration versus that, you might resonate more with one energy than another. And that's fine too. You know, it's all necessary. So that I think like that's such an important part of especially when you're talking about spiritual entrepreneurship, that's such an important part to keep in mind because the capitalistic theme that we've all been raised in has made us think there can only be one and it has to be the best and that's it. But when you come from this world, you recognize that it's impossible for there to only be one because then that is the absence of the collective, which also means the absence of the one. So in order for us to actually exist as one, we also must see the value in the one being together, which is the collective, you know?
Yeah, truly.
So,
And I have actually been able to see over the past 2 years that I've been able to stand in witness of your journey and your work of you being very, you know, general with the work that you were doing just in terms of like, hey, birth chart readings, like whatever, like, you know, I'm just kind of getting my feet wet with all this stuff to now you are really in this space where you are very much helping people to identify with their soul purpose and like what it is that they specifically are here to do and like how all of these different pieces of their story actually line up to show them why they're here, what they're doing, and how they're meant to be able to do it, and offering that level of validation to the things that they're feeling pulled towards. And I would just love, you know, before I let you go today, if you could just speak a little bit on how you came to a place where like, you know that astrology is a really powerful tool to help people in that soul remembering in that particular way.
Yeah, I think, you know, a huge part of this is, again, me looking at myself. So a lot of this was like, even in this conversation, it keeps happening where there are moments where I'm like, wait a minute, oh, but that makes sense because my Jupiter was in Aquarius. Oh my goodness, my Saturn was in Sagittarius. Right? Like I start putting the pieces together. And when I'm doing that for myself, that makes me understand other people to go, oh, now I understand why she might have been offended. She's an Aries. She needs space to be a leader. She needs space to be seen. I have to respect that. I have to see that. So all of a sudden I see where maybe I might have been the offense, but I also see where I could be the validation and the permission giver because I understand it. You know what I'm saying? So now it's like, it gives that space to go, hey, you go out there and show off, girl, do what you want to do. Or if someone is being very like, where they are very isolated and they're like, I don't know what it is, but sometimes I just don't want to deal with people. And like, I disappear for months at a time. And then my friends judge me and they're like, where is she? How come she doesn't care about people or something? And then you find out she's a Pisces. She rules over isolation. She needs a lot of alone time. She needs a lot of personal space. And if you cross over that, or if you judge her for it, or if you say, well, maybe she doesn't care about stuff, she cares actually deeply. That's why she needs a lot of space. And so when you understand that about people, once again, you give them permission to say, you don't have to feel bad that you need space. You don't have to feel like my business is going to fall apart now because I don't show up. Well, how can we find ways for you to show up that feel really good for you and your energy? Because you have your own definitions of showing up that will not align with everybody else's definition of showing up. That's just a fact, but it doesn't mean that you're not meant to show up.
Oh, Lexie, like that is like my honestly like number one pet peeve with so much of the business coaching that's out there right now is because it's like, okay, let me tell you the way that I did it. And then you're going to do it the way that I did it. And then you're going to get the same results that I got because you're going to do it the way that I did it. And it worked for me. And somebody else's success doing things the way that worked for them does not translate to it working for you. And it's just when you kind of like put that into your reality, you're like, oh, wow, that actually does make a lot of sense. Like, why have I dropped $20,000 on coaching programs that haven't worked, trying to do things in the way that other people were telling me to do them, even though it felt completely out of alignment for me, and then I shamed and blamed myself because it wasn't working, because I wasn't doing it in alignment to my energy, my truth, my astrology, my, your zodiac, your human design, your whatever it is. And that's, again, I think a lot of whether you use astrology, human design, a personality test, I don't care, but really truly getting to know yourself, accepting yourself, loving yourself from that place of non-judgment gives you so much permission to exist in the world and shine your light in the very unique and individual way that you are meant to, that only you yourself can. But if you're busy trying to fit yourself into whatever somebody else tells you you need to do, be, say, think, feel, you're going to completely miss the boat on you being able to show up in your unique truth. And that's so sad to me.
Exactly. And that's where it's like, that there's this like photo, I can't remember what it is, but it's like a fish and a bear or some other thing. And they're talking about like trying to teach the fish to like climb a tree.
Oh, yeah.
Or something like that. Right. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, of course that fish is going to fail because it's not meant to climb a tree.
It's not meant to do it. You know
I mean? But you put that fish in water and all of a sudden this thing is fast as hell, boy. You know what I mean? And so it's just like, that's what happens when we give people permission to live up to their strengths, when we give them education to live up to their power, when we give them an opportunity to remember who the fuck they are, right?
Yes.
That's what happens.
Yes. And this is where I'm like, do the coaching program if you want to, but like do something on the side where like you are able to take whatever that person's framework is, their knowledge, their expertise, what did work for them, and then alchemize it into whatever it is that's going to make sense and work for you. The whole like cookie cutter trying to like fit yourself into somebody else's box thing, like you're just setting yourself up for failure. And I know that that's literally how we've been taught. Our whole school system here in America is literally like built on that ideology of like, yes, exactly. Yeah. And so it makes sense that like, a lot of coaches can probably sell, programs based on that same type of philosophy or principle, because we have been taught to literally, be spoon fed that type of, oh, well, if it doesn't work the way that somebody else is doing it, then you're wrong. You're a failure. Right. But again, this is where getting to know yourself and also getting to know other people. Because to that point, if you know that, that coach, influencer, whoever the heck mentor you want to learn from is a XYZQ type of person. And so it makes sense that they are showing up in video and using their voice and blah, 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 blah. And okay, so that's their strength. how can I kind of take what they did and
And find
transition it
mine.
into knowing what works for me?
100%.
And to me, I'm like, why is that not something that we're all incorporating, especially as a
Yeah.
conscious entrepreneur, especially, you know, if you're looking to do any type of service type work where you're really
Yeah.
looking to hold space for your clients in some way, shape, or form, you really
Yeah.
have to know yourself and also be able to know yourself in relationship to
Two.
knowing that other person so that you're not
Yes.
taking it personally, because they're,
Right.
to your point, they're our own galaxy and we're our own galaxy, and we get to exist
Exactly.
in synergy with one
Yeah.
another, but we don't have to affect one another.
Right. We don't have to. And I look, what's so funny is, you know, again, speaking in astrology terms, that whole phrase was like the energy of the Libra. The whole phrase, the Libra energy is about that partnership. And it's about recognizing, just like with Aquarius and the other air sign, but it's more about the collective. The energy is like, I need you to be the person that's really amazing at video and really loves to be on camera and really loves to be wow, because I benefit when you show up in the collective in your strength, right? I get seen as well in the way that I like to be seen, which might not be in the forefront, right? Because now, because you're doing that, I get to actually support the community in this way. But if I don't have someone who's covering this base, I can't focus completely on my base, right? And so Libra energy kind of teaches us that, where it's like there's value in the relationships that we build, that without one, there is not the other, right? And that energy, when combined, creates its own other entity that is now birthed as a result of these energies coming together. And so when you look at the world through that, and you look at the fact that every one of us are, we are all those energies, like you're all 12 of the zodiac signs. That's what your birth chart really comes in, right? Because it shows you, well, what the sun was here when you were born, and then the moon was over here, and then this was over there. So when you see the birth chart wheel, you start to see how like you're actually every one of those 12 signs. And so in seeing that, that's why there's parts of you that you can make that phrase, that's such a Libra phrase, because that's the Libra part, kind of spilling out and saying like, this is why relations is important. You don't want to be isolated because this. But then you also have the Pisces in you, who will sometimes come out and be like, ooh, we need to disconnect from the collective. We need to like be on our own, girl. You know what I mean? And that's like, there's that beauty too. So that's where it's like, it's so, that's what helped me so much when I started to connect to myself, that I'm all of the 12 signs, that then I started to recognize like, wow, so everybody is all of that. And now if I can figure out how the relationships are between the zodiacs and the planets, between where they were when they were born, between the time that they were born, and put that into context with the story that they have in their head about what it all means, now we can come together and in partnership decipher what is the purpose of the story and your chart. Where is this supposed to go? What are the gifts? How are we supposed to use this in order to live out our purpose? If you want to monetize it, well, how do we monetize this so that way we can now live in this conscious entrepreneurship timeline that you want to be on? You know, if you want to create separations and boundaries and you're like, oh, I can't find the words, I can't find the energy within. How do we get that goddess of war? That would be the Aries coming out to be like, shut it down. You know what I mean? Like, how do we get that out of you so you can safely, confidently create the life that you want? It's all inside of you. We just got to remember. And so that's where it's like, that's how I was able to kind of make that connection. It was doing the work on myself that I started to go, and just remembering. That was the remembering too, that it's like when I'm looking and hearing conversations and how I can easily connect it to like, oh, I see that, I see this. That's when it started to make sense to me, that it's like, I need to help other people see that I can see that so that they can see it too, you know? And then when you feel that validation, you feel like, oh yeah, that is a value of mine. Oh yeah, that is a talent of mine. And now you feel allowed to go forward and do what you want to do.
Yeah. And I think that that is why, in a nutshell, like astrology is such an important tool for leaders. It really is, because I tell everyone, in order to be a good leader, you have to know yourself really, really, really well. You really have to know yourself. And also you have to be able to be that leader that's going to know when it's time to give people space, when it's time to encourage people, when it's time to maybe take a step back, maybe it's time to take a step up, maybe it's time to give somebody else some space. You're not taking things personally. When somebody is having a response or a reaction or providing you feedback, you're able to take that in and have that compassionate curiosity to be like, that's interesting. And again, bring in, astrology potentially as a tool to be like, okay, well, that makes sense because of this and this. Maybe I can interact with them by offering comfort or humor or whatever. And this is not, again, shifting or changing yourself in that chameleon people pleaser type of way. It is, yes, you calling upon those different aspects of self to help strengthen your ability to lead different types of people by knowing what it is that they are asking to receive from you in that time and in that energy.
Exactly. I love that. And it's beautiful because it also gives you freedom to be all the aspects of yourself. I know that there's heavy Scorpio in me. So there is a deep sensual nature that I like to have. And I know, especially because of where it's located in my chart, that when I'm feeling powerless, that when I lean into the Scorpio aspect of myself, that's when I increase my sense of confidence and self-power. So now I'm going to dive into, for me, a source of abundance is sensuality, is slowly moving in the dark with the music going, lots of bass, lots of, I know that like the Scorpio, she likes to be in the dark. She likes to be a little bit like unseen and behind the scenes. I need that energy sometimes. So when I'm around somebody who's also comfortable with their Scorpio, or maybe they have a lot more Scorpio than I do in my chart, she gives me permission to lean into my sexiness, to lean into my mystery, to lean into my powerness, to lean into my darkness without apology. You know what I'm saying? So that's where it's like, it's all.
I'm just like literally thinking about my very best friend in all of the world is like, my best friend Allie, who is like a Libra, like to a T, and I'm like such an Aries, and so like we complement each other really well because I'm like, okay, this is so serious and it's like such a freaking big deal, and she's like, but sparkles, okay? Like let's go get champagne. It's we can celebrate. And I'm like, we can't celebrate until we like get all of this done and blah blah blah. And she's like, or we could celebrate and get it all done. Like, exactly. Like I need her so much in my life because she just like literally helps make things balance like, so much more like pleasurable. Otherwise, I'd probably hate my business.
I mean, you would. And that's the thing, especially that relationship, because you're literally the direct opposites. So you really create balance for each other. She needs you just as badly as you need her. And at the same time, she gives you permission to relax. Sometimes when you're the Aries, you don't want to relax because you feel like the energy
I do not know when to turn it off. My oh God. So my fiance is an Aquarius, right? And so like he's just kind of like hanging out, and I'm like, so I was thinking thoughts about the thoughts that I was thinking while I was thinking about my thoughts. And he's like, oh God. Like,
right? Just
he's like, can we just like chill, man? And I'm like, were you not also thinking thoughts about your thoughts that you were thinking?
Bro, I can relate to that. My boyfriend's an Aquarius.
Like, no, I was just here existing.
Right. I was just existing. Oh yeah, we don't get that at all. We're cardinal signs, so we don't do that. We are like, we cannot do that.
I love you, honey. Thank you. Thank you to our Aquarius partners.
Right, exactly. We love you so much. Thank you for saving our mindset. But yes, that's why it's like, it's beautiful to have all these different things because there's parts of you that they give you permission to show up as. And at the same time, you do the same thing for them. And so it creates this beautiful, like the diversity of it ends up being such a gorgeous thing because then it lets you play with life a little bit more. And yes, there are times when people are incredibly frustrating because you probably don't have a lot of what they have. So if you don't have a lot of water in your chart and then you meet someone who has tons of water in their chart, their emotionality seems truly uncomfortable and possibly scary to you, and that's because it's not something that you really connect to. It's in you, but it's not something you connect to. And so part of what their value in your life is allowing you to connect through that flow while also giving them permission to not always have to do it that way. You're exposing them to another way of how your galaxy works and showing how that also is something just as effective. It's not better or worse. This is just us working together, showing off our flow. That's all. Right. We're showing up our creativity. Yeah. So that's what makes astrology like so powerful to me because I feel like it's made me even more
It's like that
kind towards
permission
people.
to not take it personally. Is that like, that's like the
Yeah.
biggest thing that I'm hearing here is that like,
Yeah.
we all could use a little help not taking things personally, all of us.
Yeah, we
And
could.
so if like astrology actually gives you that foundation to be able to take that pause and take that
Yeah.
step back to be like, so maybe this does not have anything to do with me, because newsflash, it
Right.
doesn't. 1000% of the time, it has nothing to do with you. That is true fact.
Facts.
But like to be able to give you that tool to help you take that perspective, to
Right.
help you take that pause, to be able to have that compassionate curiosity about the situation, about the person. I'm like sitting here thinking, because I joked with my team at one point, I was like, I'm literally going to say that like, if you're a Scorpio, I will not work with you. Like, me and Scorpio, it's just my future mother-in-law is a Scorpio. Love you, Gabby, if you're listening to this. But like,
my future mother-in-law is also a Scorpio. What is going on with us?
That's very interesting. But it's just a lot of very strong energy. I have a lot of strong energy. They have a lot of strong energy. But like being able to take that step back, I have actually been able to, again, pull certain parts of myself out when I am working with somebody who has a lot of heavy Scorpio energy, so that I can offer more of a balance, because I don't bring this heavy, big leadership energy. They don't need that from me. They got plenty of that on their own. They do not need that from me. Like if I'm showing up as leader, they're like, excuse me? And I'm like, I'm trying to help you. And they're like, I will help me. And I'm like, but you called me. And they're like, no, I know I called you, but I don't need your help. I'm like, well, then what am I doing here? Like, like kind of a thing. So I just, I approach that energy very differently. I call upon different parts of myself. And it doesn't mean that I'm weakening or lessening myself. It just means that I'm honoring how they're showing up in the world. And that's me showing up as a leader.
Yeah, right. And that's also showing up as a leader. Because again, when you're honoring that, you're also making space for the benefit of the collective that you are part of. So that's why it gives you so much, it gives you grace to let people be people. It also doesn't mean that you don't have to set boundaries, doesn't mean that you don't have to honor yourself. Of course, honoring yourself, but don't, like you said, it's about not taking it personally, because in order for you to show up as the leader that you are, you can't get stuck in all these stories and everybody's galaxies. Some galaxies are not operating as they should, and you don't need to bother with
there's
that.
Like a lot of black holes and like different, cosmic events going on. Like we need to stay far away,
Right. So you just stay far away.
Try not to get sucked into anybody's like black hole situation. Like we're not
doing Exactly. So you're allowed to do that too, while also having compassion for the fact that that person has an entirely different thing going on. But you don't have to make it about yourself. You don't have to make it mean anything about you. You can just keep going. What are the lessons that relationship, that connection, that event taught me? And then how can I take that and move it into my world and turn it into something that is beautiful, that is abundant, that brings me joy, that brings me peace, or is part of my purpose altogether. And that's essentially like, that's what I'm doing, is helping people to decipher their feelings when it comes to these emotions, the relationships that they're in, the boundaries that they need to set, where they can increase their sense of confidence, where they can increase their sense of meaning and purpose. Why something triggered them? Why did that upset you? What parts of you are actually being activated to learn a bigger lesson here? Those are all parts of your astrology. And all I'm doing is literally helping you to decipher the message. And again, because I'm part of the collective, I'm not trying to take over and do all the things. I have a lot of knowledge about different things, so I can support you in giving you like the basics for, okay, I see some issues here that might cause or contribute to like a lot of anxiety. So let's talk about some nervous system regulation. I'm sharing some of my story to support you in doing so, but I'm also going to refer you out to other people who are specialized in those things, because that's not part of my job. That's part of their job as part of the collective. I'm just developing your awareness of who you are and what you're meant to do as this leader, and then giving you that validation and that push to show up, and that's what I think is astrology.
And that's just such a full circle moment, I think, for us to end on, because we really opened this conversation talking about how you hadn't spoken to your mom, for 7 years. And because of this healing work that you've done, because of understanding your astrology and just astrology in general, and being able to have this space of neutrality and this compassionate curiosity and allowing yourself to just see everybody in that space that you just, really beautifully outlined for us, that is actually the thing that's allowed you to have repair in that context, and have it not at in a way that's at detriment to yourself. Like you're not compromising in any way. You're able to still exist in relationship to this person, still being wholly and fully true to yourself, but also honoring their truth as well. And I think that that is what makes a fully embodied leader, in my opinion. And that's where, for me, anyone who comes on this podcast, I've told people numerous times, like, I am here to amplify and lift up the voices of people who I find to be true and embodied leaders, and especially those who are helping other people to step into their leadership as well. And like, that is 1000% you, Lexie. And so I know everyone is now going to be like, all right, how do I hook up with this lady? Because she has got some shit to share. Tell the people how they can connect, what your offers are, let them know all the things. Of course, we will have everything linked in the show notes as well.
Okay. Well, yes. Thank you so much, Amber. Honestly, just for everything that you're saying too. It means the world to me. So thank you truly for not only seeing me, but validating me and being part of my story and just really just giving me a space to show up like this. So, okay. I'm not trying not to cry, but you know.
It's all love here. Okay. All belongs.
So thank you. So thank you so much. But yes, please find me over on Instagram. I am pretty much in my stories almost every day, but I'm a Leo moon, so that's why. And and so definitely come over there at the Lexie Wilson. That's TheLexie.
And Lexie does have a blue check mark. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Lexie?
So do not be fooled by these people. Okay.
She does have a blue check mark because lots of people be trying to scam on Lexie.
They
so
do.
The Lexie
they
Wilson
really
with the blue check mark. She's paying the $14.99 to keep it real for y'all. Okay. So like.
Fellow says, okay, I'm putting that money down to save y'all. Okay. So find me with the blue check. I'm usually in my stories, and then yes, astrology readings. You can DM me. The link is also in my bio, over on my Instagram as well. So, and I do tend to fill up quickly, and I'm not just saying that. These are facts.
Yeah, it's facts. It's facts. Because I actually low key looked before our recording. I was like, I know I'm gonna want to book something like after I talk to Lexie. So let me look.
Oh yeah, girl.
Come on, girl, you booked out. Congratulations. But yeah.
And
I'm thinking about it. Just get on the calendar.
Just get on it. But yeah, so I do have that. I'm starting to offer packages as well, where I'm offering, like, let's say if you're doing like a launch or something and you're going like, I don't know exactly what to expect in terms of the astrology and how do I deal with my own energy, my own self-talk, dealing with things like that. So now I have packages for working with me for an entire month at a time, weekly readings, and not only the readings, but the coaching and the support, since I do have that therapeutic background as well. So I'm leaning even heavier into creating larger capacities for us to work other than just the one-on-one.
I'm also going to recommend that if you are in like a business program, coaching program, or whatever, that might be something you want to supplement with a little Lexie on the side, so you can help tailor whatever you're learning specifically to you and your energy.
Good. Yeah, exactly. Because that's what we were talking about earlier, right? Where it's like, yeah, you can learn from these people, but remember, like, what worked for them is not a guaranteed work for you. You have your own energy. So I love that idea of like supplementing, because then I am able to take what you're learning inside of your business program, but really cater it to saying like, okay, well, actually your Leo is in this energy. So we want to show up this way rather than this way. You'll feel more comfortable. And what I love about, again, what I do is because I was a therapist and I did work in social work before this. A lot of times if people find that their chart doesn't resonate with how they've been taught, that's that nature versus nurture vibe. Because I have that ability to support you in learning how to develop the skills necessary to show up as truly you, that's where working together for a longer period of time can really help to overcome the negative self-talk, to overcome some of the coping skills that you might have developed that worked at that time, but now we're holding back.
But now we're like, it all belongs. We're in a space
of
it all belongs,
so we're not judging it. We got
the balance, the dark, the light. It's all good. We're learning how to like deconstruct those narratives and bring it in so that we can exist in this beautiful neutral space.
So it's all necessary, but we can definitely keep rising and vibrating higher. And so that's what I do inside of the coaching packages for astrology. So just come on by the Lexie Wilson with the blue check and find a way to connect with me in my stories or to book a reading.
Oh, Lexie, thank you so much. This was our first like 2-part episode. I knew it was going to happen somewhere along the line. I didn't
And
know
I
like,
got to be the one.
who. Yes, I was just because, I tell people all the time that my favorite podcast is The School of Greatness with Lewis Howes. It's my favorite podcast.
Ooh.
And, Lewis Howes, he keeps everything to like an hour, but there's these rare moments in time where they're just having such a good convo that he's like, we just couldn't stop. And now it's like a 2-part episode. And I was like, you know what? That's gonna happen at some point in time. And sure enough, Lexie, like, yes. And this was just like, it was just so juicy. I'm like, I gotta go feed my poor dog. She probably starving. But like, it was just one of those really beautiful things where I just feel like there's so much goodness in your story. I absolutely want to have you back to like talk more of like the finer details about astrology. I would just love to be able to continue to offer astrology as a tool for leadership and really highlighting that. And I'm just so grateful for your time, for your transparency, for your authenticity, and for you just like literally like leaning into doing some really
like what was I doing?
Unsafe stuff, but knowing it felt safe for you
exactly
on a soul level. But really, I'm just like, oh wow, like she gets some divine protection, like for sure. That could have gone way sideways. So we're really glad that it went and worked out really well for you, and that you're here safe and sound with us, able to support the people here today.
Right, exactly. Thank you so much for that. Oh man, yes, this was amazing. So thanks for having me. I would definitely love to come back, and thanks for just holding space for me too, because this ended up being such a beautiful awakening even for myself and awareness for myself. So thank you for creating this space.
There you have it. Another episode of the Sacred Leadership Podcast on the books. I hope your time spent here served you and nourished you. Join us every Tuesday for more honest conversations and powerful insights. Remember, exceptional leaders share the wealth. Send this episode to someone who would benefit, leave a review to let others know about the show, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Talk to you soon.